Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for joining me in my living room. My name is Gil McGowan, and I'm one of the candidates running to succeed Rachel Notley as leader of the NDP and hopefully to be the next premier of this province. If you've been following me, you'll know that I'm the candidate that has a very specific strategy for defeating the UCP and winning the next election. In particular, I've made the point, based on polling, that there is a missing piece in the coalition that we need to build in order to defeat Daniel Smith in the next election, and that missing piece is working people. What the polling shows us very clearly is that we've been winning among Albertans who describe themselves as middle class, who have university education, and who live in the two big cities. But sadly, we've been losing among Albertans who describe themselves as working class and who have college, trades, or high school educations. And as a longtime New Democrat and the current president of the Alberta Federation of Labour, honestly, that's a little bit of a gut punch to me, but it's also a challenge that I think that we're up to if we understand that that's where we need to focus our efforts. So over the past month and a half or so, I've been releasing platform planks that are aimed at speaking to that missing cohort in our coalition, working people. And basically I'm making the argument that in order to fill the missing piece, build the big coalition that we need to defeat the UCP, we need to attract working people. And the way to do that is by making offers to them, policy offers that resonate with them and address their concerns. So the previous big ideas that I've talked about are pivoting our economy towards new opportunities in a low carbon economy, so creating jobs in that respect. I've also talked about styling ourselves as the party of wage increases for working people, which is particularly important at a time of rising cost of living and stagnating wages. I also think that we should become the party of affordability. And last week I talked about how we can attract working people back to the party by making sure that we're the party that keeps Albertans healthy, so protecting our public health care system. And today, the fifth plank has to do with public education. And so, the target is working people, and working Albertans understand that high quality public education is the key to their success and the success of their children. At the same time, economists and public policy experts have been saying with a growing sense of urgency that access to high quality public education for as many people as possible is one of the keys to building a really strong economy. Unfortunately, the UCP is moving Alberta in exactly the wrong direction when it comes to education. Since they formed government in 2019, Alberta has dropped to the bottom of the pile among Canadian provinces when it comes to per pupil spending on K-12 education, and concerns about class size, curriculum, and staff morale and retention have become acute. In his book titled Upheaval, a renowned scientist and historian named Jared Diamond wrote, and I quote, "If you want to predict the economic future of a country, examine the quality of their education system. By that measure, Alberta's economic future is very much in doubt." I believe it's important for Albertans to understand that the UCP's education policies are not motivated by traditional conservative concerns about debt and deficits. Instead, it's clear to me that the UCP is engaged in what amounts to an ideological war on public education. Helping Albertans understand what the UCP is really up to needs to be a top priority for the NDP in opposition, and reversing their approach to public education needs to be one of our top priorities once we form government. Tonight, I want to share with you how I would fight to save public education in Alberta, and how that fight will help us attract the support we need to defeat the UCP in 2027. So it's basically a top 10 list that I'm going to share with you tonight. And it's a little bit long, but I think it's important. So please bear with me. So first, I feel really strongly that we need a focused campaign to fight back for public education. And and I think if you're joining me, you're probably a political geek like I am, and you'll probably agree that politics is all about narratives, and the UCP has deployed many narratives to undermine public education. So instead of responding to each of those narratives separately, I believe we need to deploy our own narrative, describing what we think the UCP is really up to and explaining why it's bad for working Albertans and their families. Destroying public education as we know it is the UCP's project, and we can't afford to be squeamish about saying so. We also have to develop and deploy our own narrative about how we will update public education to make sure our kids are prepared to succeed and thrive in a changing world. Second, we need to commit to big funding increases. Conservatives have long employed the strategy of breaking public services through underfunding, then using the ensuing crisis to justify privatization. That's what's happening right now in Alberta. But the UCP has added to this well-worn strategy, and what they've added to this well-worn strategy is not just privatization, but also politicization. The fact that Alberta spends less per pupil on K-12 education than any other province is not an accident or an oversight. It's part of the UCP plan. As NDP leader, I will campaign hard to make sure that Albertans understand that the UCP's chronic underfunding, their refusals to build new schools, and their 3-year average funding model are all part of a deliberate strategy to undermine public education. And as Premier, I would move Alberta to first place per pupil funding as opposed to last place, where we're currently languishing under the UCP. Third, we need to bring class sizes down. One of the most visible and troubling consequences of the UCP's campaign against public education in Alberta is the explosion of class sizes in Alberta schools. 40 has become the new 30 in junior high and senior high schools, and 30 has become the new 20 in elementary schools. The implications for the quality of education in our province are dire. As NDP leader, I will make the case for a massive increase in new school construction to keep up with Alberta's booming population. I will also point out that buildings don't teach kids, teachers do. With that in mind, I will advocate for hiring 6,000 new teachers so Alberta can finally meet the targets for class size set out by the Learning Commission. Fourth, we need to get education workers a raise. The UCP has been trying to break education by deliberately underfunding it, but they've also been trying to break the system by breaking teachers and other education workers. Again, this is a feature, not a bug of the UCP strategy. How else do you explain the fact that the average educational assistant, who is a key part of our educational system, is paid less than $30,000 a year, even in the wealthiest province in Canada? How else do you explain the fact that many educational assistants and teachers in this province haven't seen wage increases in up to a decade, even as Alberta records the biggest jumps in the cost of living in 40 years and the highest rate of inflation among all Canadian provinces? Stagnant wages are a concrete example of the disrespect that the UCP directs towards workers in our public education system almost every day. The NDP needs to become an advocate for wage increases in education. This will help win the support of education workers and their families, which is key to winning the next election, but it's also key to attracting and retaining the workers we need to build a strong public education system. Fifth, we need to eliminate public funding for private schools. The UCP's real goal is to use public money to pay for private schooling, especially schooling that indoctrinates kids with beliefs that make them more likely to vote Conservative when they reach adulthood. Former Premier Jason Kenney, who, by the way, never went to public schools himself, was very clear about this in numerous interviews. He blamed declining support for Conservative parties among younger voters on, quote, liberal education in public schools. Danielle Smith has not only maintained this approach, she has expanded it. Under the guise of school choice, the UCP yet again increased public funding for private schools, this time by 14%, while at the same time giving public schools a funding increase that doesn't come close to matching inflation and the growth in student enrollment. As Premier, I will eliminate all public funding for private schools, aligning Alberta with the majority of Canadian provinces who do not use public money to fund private schools. I will also tear up the UCP's so-called Choice in Education Act and return power over approving and overseeing charter schools to elected school boards, as opposed to allowing those unelected boards of charter schools to regulate themselves. Sixth, we need to fix the UCP's curriculum mess. Curriculum is at the heart of the UCP's war on public education. As Premier, I will return control over curriculum development to education experts, subject matter experts, and key stakeholders, including teachers. Curriculum will be reviewed in regular cycles, staggered by subject, so that piloting and implementation does not become too burdensome. The focus will be on preparing Alberta students for success in a changing world, as opposed to influencing them politically. Seventh, we need to fund for increasing complexity. Another problem that has been left unaddressed by the UCP is classroom complexity. Not only are classes larger, they are also often filled with students facing a much wider range of challenges, everything from language issues to behavior issues to health issues. As Premier, I will take this issue of increasing complexity seriously by doing things like reducing class size, providing specialized classrooms for kids who need specialized attention, ending the use of seclusion rooms and instead hiring educational assistants with specialized training in behavior management. Eighth, we need to provide increased funding for all education partners. Another way in which the UCP has been trying to break public education is by cutting or freezing funding for the wide range of professionals who support teachers in their work of teaching kids and managing classrooms. The list of professionals and educational partners who are being stretched to the breaking point include, but are not limited to, the following: speech pathologists, social workers, administrators, school secretaries, custodians, maintenance people, occupational therapists, and psychologists. As Premier, I would commit to funding all the support and wraparound services necessary to ensure high-quality education for Alberta students, including those with higher needs. Ninth, we need to make schools a healthier place to work and study. There are many things that the UCP has done to harm the students and staff in our public education system, but one of the worst, and sadly one of the least discussed, is their complete and utter negligence on the subject of health and safety, especially in the context of COVID. Experts now agree that schools were, and still are frankly, perhaps the most significant centers for transmission of COVID. They also agree that COVID is not over, and in many cases, it's not mild. In addition, they agree that each reinfection increases the chances that a long COVID infection will lead to a debilitating case of long COVID. Finally, they agree that one of the groups that is most likely to suffer from COVID and long COVID is education workers, largely because of their ongoing exposure to hundreds of students every day. Not only did the UCP ignore these realities, they have actively been sweeping them under the carpet. They have even stood in the way of school boards who expressed a desire to protect the health and safety of their staff and students. The bottom line is this: the UCP has put the interests of ideology, politics, and their extremist anti-vax base ahead of the health and safety of Alberta kids. This has to stop. And the NDP has to stop being afraid to talk about it. As Premier, I would look at COVID through the lens of public health and workplace health and safety. I would promote and support things like the following in all Alberta schools: monitoring of indoor air quality, higher standards for ventilation and the filtration of indoor air, the use of mask mandates when conditions warrant it, and I would provide all staff and students with appropriate masks free of charge. 10th, and finally, and we're getting to the end here, in order to protect public education in Alberta, we need to take action on misinformation. Experts and ordinary citizens alike understand that the world is increasingly awash with pernicious misinformation. Trolls, bots, spam, deep fakes, Russians, Chinese, Saudis, political parties, shadowy campaigns funded by billionaires and self-interested corporations, InfoWars, Truth Social, Rebel Media, you name it. There is no shortage of bad faith actors who are trying to bend the minds of ordinary citizens and influence the course of events. The UCP and its partners like Take Back Alberta Both use misinformation from others and generate misinformation of their own as part of their efforts to further their agendas, including their attack on public education. That's the bad news. The good news is that public education can be a big part of the solution. As Premier, I would engage the best misinformation experts in the country, some of whom live right here in Alberta, to help develop a course for Alberta schools that will help students recognize misinformation and not be sucked in by it. The focus would not be on censoring content, but rather on equipping our young people to navigate safely and successfully in a world filled with misinformation. My goal would be to make Alberta the Finland of North America, and one of the reasons I say that is because Finland, right next to Russia, has sort of pioneered education as a tool to deal with misinformation. And my goal would be to make Alberta the Finland of North America in terms of equipping its citizens to deal with misinformation. So that's a summary of my top 10 list of what we need to do as New Democrats to protect public education here in Alberta. We've loaded the full plank on our platform to complement the other 4 platforms that we've released over the past 6 weeks. There are 2 more to come in coming weeks, and I hope to have the full set up on the website in time for the next Leaders Debate, which is scheduled for May 11th, so just about less than 10 days from now. Well, I guess I'm just going to close by thanking everyone for joining us. I really enjoy these conversations, and I look forward to the next debate, and I would be really proud if I could, and thankful if I could get your support in this leadership contest. I really do think that the New Democrats are on the cusp of making a big breakthrough in this province. I think we can defeat Danielle Smith in the next election and form the kind of government that Albertans can really get excited about. So thanks very much for your support. I'll just reiterate Tom's suggestion that the donations would be really helpful, because I know a lot of you know that I'm the leader of the AFL, but union donations are prohibited, so I'm relying exclusively on small donations from individuals like you. So if you liked what you heard tonight, please consider donating. Campaigns are expensive, and we want to make this campaign as robust as possible with events like this, so that there is a real choice in the leadership race. But thanks very much for joining us, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening and have a good weekend coming up. Take care.